All right, I'm a little bit late on this one. Mostly just because been busy like playing Star Citizen. I know, weird. This is Star Citizen Live Gamedev, which are typically not very, very sharing of what's coming next in Star Citizen or what is currently happening. These are like Star Citizen Live Gamedev is usually letting you know that it's not the type of videos that you typically want to watch. Production discussion. So these tend to be worse. Now, no knock on producers. They have very important roles or whatever. But it tends, listen, I think it's very obvious that Star Citizens are interested in the video game, and some Star Citizens are interested in game development. This is one that sounds like it's going to be game development focused, and I was going to skip it. But the reason we're watching it, for one, I didn't know one of the devs that are on the show, Phil from our Twitch chat that pops in every once in a while and is super awesome in chat. So it'll be cool to get to know Phil. The other is that they mentioned me again. And apparently it got bad. So I got to see this and react to it, I guess. And I don't know, man. This is one of the things of growing on the internet in terms of my content is getting a little weird. So let's watch.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and we're back. We had a bit of a hiatus, some technical issues, some logistical issues, some minor health-related issues, but all relatively in our past, mostly resolved, and we come back with a new look. Show us our new look. Woo, hey! Joining us on the show this week are members of our production team here in the UK studio and from our Austin studio, Mr. Jake Ross.
Hi, everybody.
And Mr. Philip, I should have asked before, Passara, yeah. Passara, close enough. Philip, Jake, welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Thanks for to be here. Inviting us.
Phil, this is your first time on SEL. Is it okay to call you Phil? Again,
yeah,
another
absolutely.
question I should have asked before the show.
Most people call me Phil, so
okay,
that's fine.
Good. See. We're getting our feet back under us. Jake, you're over here, not just visiting. You're kind of on a extended outreach.
Yeah,
what would you?
I've been here since the beginning of June. I'll be here through the end of July. So a little summer excursion to our UK studio.
And you're normally out of the Austin, Texas.
Out of the Austin studio. Yeah, that's right.
All right. So,
so we've never seen Phil before, but Jake, back in the Wait for 3.0 days, was very important, was giving, I think because he was part of the studio that was doing the release stuff, there was a lot of conversations with Jake about where we were and where we were going. So if you were around during those days, Jake's kind of a legend.
Normally we do the introductions and stuff, and I say introduce yourselves, and we talk about what you do. This week's entire show is about what production does. It's the ins and outs of production. It's everything that it is, everything that it is not, some of the myths about production. We'll go over some of their big victories. I'm sure we'll hear a couple of horror stories along
So we're not back. Okay.
the way. So if this is your show about where you're like, boy, I really always wanted to know about production and what it actually does, this is the show for you. If you want to know where the Banu Merchantmen, you can read.
And that'll explain. You can't see it, but here, I'll remove my camera. That'll explain the 14,009 views. Probably one of their worst performing videos. There's a Space Tomato video, just not even on Star Citizen, that's got 25,000 views. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I usually take these as I would take videos like these as a bit of a learning experience and look at the numbers and realize
John Crew, care
these
of
don't work.
Manchester Goodyard, 6 Goodyard Place, Manchester M3 for 3 GB. I forgot. You can look it up. So let's start basic. On the LinkedIn level, what's a producer in video games do?
On the LinkedIn level,
what's the,
I don't even know what
the
that
job
means.
listing like?
I worked in casinos. We don't use LinkedIn.
It depends on the studio, right? So game production is not the same across the industry. Every studio runs the production differently from another. But generally, like baseline, it's about supporting the development effort at large, supporting teams, managing schedules, scope,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
timelines,
these guys schedule everything, right?
priorities. It's a supportive role, right? We support teams in their endeavors and them hitting their goals. But we're also like leading the charge, right? We're
Not gonna lie, Phil's eyes
part of leadership.
pretty dreamy.
And it's all about
Pretty dreamy.
plotting the course for the next few months, years, whatever the project needs.
Yeah, and I'd kind of echo that and say, when I think of like just the basic building blocks of a producer role, I think of basically 3 pillars or columns. One is communication, the other is planning, and then risk. So production is basically managing communication, making sure that's flowing smoothly. Planning is all about schedules and making sure that we have them, first of all, but also that when things inevitably change, because that never happens in game development, that we update them accordingly and then communicate out those updates. And then the last pillar of risk is managing potential risks or impacts that might negatively have consequences on the schedule, essentially.
Turn it up
So
a
let's stick
little
with
bit.
these 3 pillars for a bit while we're talking about it. The communicate pillar. You say it's managing communication. Now, it's easy to sit here and say, okay, you manage communication, but what does that actually entail? Is it just sending 50 emails a day? Is it constantly just send?
I mean, if it's managing communication, whoever decides when we run these events needs a new producer or a better one or one in general. Whoever is determining the prices of ships and not communicating them randomly could use some help in that department as well.
Sending out a slew of
Goddamn.
Teams messages all day. Is it what I do when I need to communicate? I usually just I head to I have to chase people down. I have to chase people down because they don't always respond to an email as quick as I need to or a Teams message. Like I have to go find them and like stand them and like I eyeball them while I wait for them to get off the call and then I'm like, hey, now you got my attention. What's communication like for producers?
Yeah, so I think for me, when you talk about communication management, like when you especially it can vary from project to project, and it's kind of a disclaimer for this whole conversation, by the way, is that production can mean a lot of different things just depending on where you work. Titles can be different. Producer versus project manager or
Coordinator.
development director or coordinator. Yeah, there's lots of different words that people throw around for what kind of we do, and every company seems to have a different expectation about what a producer does at their various job, right? So there's that for everybody.
You're going to hear that disclaimer a few times.
But quite a bit. But at least for us, when I think of communication management, especially for a project this scale, because this is very different for a small shop where everybody works in the same location, right? Or if everyone's remote. But there's plenty of different platforms for communication through email and messaging platforms and all that kind of stuff. So, but for a project of our scale and the different departments that are involved, it helps to have a plan for how you communicate. It's not enough to just say, well, just hit me up whenever something's happening, right? Like you want to say, like I was literally having a conversation with QA earlier this week about how we communicate progress and status towards bugs and how production can help give QA the information they need. We have these various channels in our communication platform that we use to send messages, but how often are we sending those messages? Does it make more sense to...
I mean, also just the way they communicate bugs to us with the issue council is a huge problem, right? With like marking them as solved when they're not and shit. There's lots of weird shit that goes on.
Consolidate all of the information you need into a single meeting, or does it make more sense to send little tidbits of questions throughout the day, right? What makes most sense?
Maybe this is
And
part
how
of
do you
that,
keep
essentially.
from ballooning to where it's just absolutely untenable, you know? So organizing the flow of communication is an important part of a project our size and managing a project our size.
Menace7 in the chat says, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for watching, Menace. No, but you make a good point. It's, you know, when you come into the business like this or whatever, you know, you've got artists, you know, they.
I mean, dude, you can't get fucking mad at this. Like, this is the thing, dude. This is called Star Citizen Live, and it's this weird like thing that Jared wants to do that clearly a significantly less, you know, number of people care about, right? Like, can we just look at the videos on their Inside SC, 103,000 views. Inside SC, 70,000 views. Star Citizen Live, 22,000 views. Star Citizen Live Gamedev, 18,000 views, right? Let's scroll down to the vehicle Gamedev. Now, this is just ships, 40,000 views, right? We could scroll down to ones that are a little bit further along. What is this? Live mining, salvage, and tractors. I'm not sure what this one is. 33,000. Animation one, 17,000. This one's kind of wild that the mission team only did 18. Montreal was another game dev one. The engineer, 30. I guess people just don't like it. Like, when was the last time it broke like 50K? All About Alpha, 318. And Master Modes, which was like one of the biggest wastes of time I've ever watched. I think people know that, you know, like, I don't know, man. I think we, you know, it's not just about views, but views are definitely telling you, you know, it's obviously giving you some information of who are you making these videos for? Are you making them for yourselves, or are you making them for us? If you're making them for us, there's that as well, right? And it for me, it sounds like they're making these videos for themselves. And maybe this is what Jared wants to do, and he's making it for himself and all that. But I think maybe these should be like separate, broken off things that are Jared's, you know, buggy racetrack, you know? And we should stick to Star Citizen with the Star Citizen content.
They go to school or whatnot, they train to be artists. You got designers, they go and they train, you know, in game design, or they, in all of these curriculums, I've been to a few, you know, video game job fairs and everything. There's not really a course in communication. I mean, there's a major that, you know, your parents are really disappointed in you if you pick it. Hi, Mom. But, you know, it's the act of communicating is one of those things that is not generally taught. You're taught to be an artist, but you're not taught how to communicate that work and effectively with other teams and like that. And that's one of the
I mean, you're
big
taught that
areas
throughout
where
your entire
producers come
life.
in. They form that membrane between all the different disciplines and make sure information is flowing from one to another as effectively as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication consists of multiple like factors that you have to account for. Like, communication is not something you can learn on like a Udemy course. It's something you have to build a skill for and get better at over time. And the greatest communicators are succinct, they're clear, they're concise, right? They get across what they want in the clearest way possible with the fewest words, right? Great orators always are like the great communicators that we aspire to be. We want to explain something very complex without going into the nitty-gritty and get people on board. And in game production, communication is very similar. When we coordinate with multiple teams, for instance, to get a feature out the door, or multiple departments, we cannot sit in hour-long meetings and discuss about all the kind of things that we'd like to talk about. It has to be specific to that meeting. We have to get to the bottom of what we're trying to achieve and get the job done, right?
Taught to BS effectively? No, that's different. That's like the marketing team. This communication is how to not BS. It's about getting it, communicating issues or things being finished correctly.
Communications, you want to follow up on that? How much of your day would you say is spent in meetings?
More than I would like to admit, probably. But it's
Phil
good.
telling
it's
Elliot he's a
important
bad
meetings.
dev.
Like
Yep.
when we have meetings that waste everyone's time, we tend to cancel them. But in most of the meetings that I'm in is with directors, leads, other producers, other leadership members, and we try to get our features out the door. We try to establish a better process. They're all valuable.
There was, I've had 5 or 6 titles here in my time here, and the second to last one had the word producer in it, and it was probably the most time-consuming aspect of that. Like when I became a producer, I was suddenly in so many more meetings for visibility and for knowledge, and you should just need to know this and stuff like this. And it was like, I still had all my other responsibilities, and it's what led us to separate the role and to get my own dedicated producer. Hi, David. Let's go to another pillar: risks. So this was the one you listed third, but I'm going to go to this one next. Talk to me about identifying and managing risks.
Yeah. So risk management
What is a risk?
huge part of what we do. Part of making sure you're delivering things on time is making sure that you're trying to as proactively as possible.
I'm glad he said it, because I was.
That you are looking out for.
When was the last time you did
things
that,
can negatively
Phil?
impact your schedule, right? And it's impossible to be able to 100% identify risk ahead of time, 100% of the time. But you try to identify things as they're happening. So as an example, if you have a gate review coming up for a particular feature or a ship or something like that, and something happens where some found work appears like out of nowhere, seemingly. Hey, we didn't know that we needed to add.
Found work appears out of nowhere. I know where it appeared from. It probably magically appeared from this man's office. I know where it came from.
This additional thing, right? That is a risk at that point. Okay, we don't quite know what this is yet, but it very well could have an impact on the milestone we're about to hit. We're about the stage gate we're about to hit. So let's.
Chris Roberts played another AAA game, and now work appeared out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. Can we somehow make this work within our current schedule by bringing somebody else in to help out, or reducing the scope somewhere else?
I know, Elliot. Allow me to make jokes.
You're taking the problem, you're assessing a potential solution to mitigate that problem, and you're tracking that. You're saying, okay, I've got that documented. If this thing comes to pass, I know to execute in this way. And hopefully, if you are able to mitigate the risk, you keep your schedule on track. Often, the mitigation strategies don't work, or there's nothing you can do. There is a risk mitigation strategy called accept. Sometimes you have to just accept the risk, or it's a business decision. You know what? We're willing to accept that risk because of any number of different reasons, right?
Right. There are a number of situations, and people who have followed the project for a while, will probably be able to identify several of these at the times where we've had our quarterly release schedule for the last couple of years, and the idea was that the patches would be released,
which is like non-existent at this point, but sure.
And and if things weren't quite ready, they would just pull out and be left to another quarter. And sometimes that happens. Lots of things. It's not. We thought it was going to be this quarter, and we pulled it out because of risks. It's not going to make it. We moved it to another one. But sometimes there's something you want so much, or it's necessary for the next 6 months of work, or it's like this is like no, it's like we need to take that risk, even if the patch or even if the deliverable slips a week or two, or so much in order to get that in. How is it like figuring that?
I don't think we've gone a single patch cycle in the last 2 years without them still adding features in the PTU. So this isn't a sometimes thing at all.
Out. Is that just the decision of one person? Is that the work of a committee? Is there a formula to it?
I mean, usually when we identify potential risk for a deliverable, like a feature or something, I think we had a recent example that we've talked about the ship trespass feature, for instance.
Yeah.
So we had a full-blown schedule for the feature on a task level. We knew when it would be ready, but there was always this risk looming that there could be more edge cases that we have to address before we can release the feature in like a
This is a
enough
good
state,
example.
right? So that was one of those risks that we tried to mitigate but couldn't. And then we didn't feel comfortable with just releasing it anyway because these edge cases needed to be dealt with. And so we had to pull it out of that release. But in other instances, it's usually a discussion between production, the team leadership, and a director like Todd.
I mean, this
We'll
was the
sit
right
down, we'll go over
decision
the
for
risk.
sure.
And then we'll give him a few options and discuss it with him. And then if he's
We
happy to
all
go
know.
down the road of, okay, let's shoot for it, right?
We all know this was the right decision, was to not do this yet.
Let's put
We all want the feature, but anybody who's mad that the feature isn't there is insane, right? Like, the problems that were going to come with this were significantly worse than the solutions.
a few more people on it so we can get it out on time, then we'll do that. And if he would prefer we keep it, we make it good, we get it in a better state.
Nobody told me
then
that
we'll
it
do
was this
instead.
Phil.
It's always a coordination effort between leads.
And to that, I'd add, sort of how this process starts is you look at your release, you look at just the release that you're planning for, and you try to identify what are our tentpole deliverables, right? What are the things that are really going to prop up this release and be the big selling points for this release, the things that are going to excite people, right? So you identify what those things are, and you then discuss what your level of risk appetite is. And basically, risk appetite is what's our tolerance for risk with these specific features. And generally speaking, your tolerance for risk and basically allowing potential to go down different paths that might impact a schedule negatively.
See, like, man, you got two guys here, one that works in the UK studio, and then you got another one who works in the Austin studio that we could totally, I would love to hear some examples from him. What's happening with cargo? Talk to me about like your scheduling for that and where we are with it. Right? Stuff like that. It would be like the moment Phil started talking about an actual Star Citizen thing, this got so much less boring. It was just like, oh, relevant information for me.
Your risk appetite might be higher for tentpole deliverables because that's going to be a make or break sort of feature, whereas something that may not have as big of an impact.
No, I mean like continuing the cargo refactor and what the risks may be and all that stuff.
Or it could be even a big thing, but we just like, you know what, this needs a little bit more time in the oven, right? The risk appetite is low on this, so let's go ahead and do that. The trick with this is that everybody has to be in alignment. Everybody has to have the same risk appetite.
And everything has to go the way you expect it to go.
Yeah, yes, exactly that. Yeah.
Captain Louis Coronado in the chat says, "Bro, literally everything in Star Citizen is an edge case." Mm-hmm. It's not wrong. It's
not exactly wrong.
Actually, let's talk about that for a second. When it's game development is everyone watching and this here understand is difficult, right? Things come in, we're trying new things all the time, especially for a project like ours. It's always on the cutting edge. We're always trying new things and doing things in different.
I know when he says that, you're probably like, shut up or whatever. It's like, okay, I get it. Game development's hard, but 10 years, blah, 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 blah. But like, he's 100% right. He just is. This just is what it is. And I think a lot of the problems that we come across now are not, hey, game development hard. It's, hey, we communicated one thing and you got another. Hey, we said we were going to do this and then we did that, right? It's a lot less of like, I think a lot of people are like pretty much content with what's been going on and what's being delivered and like can kind of see the potential for the game and all those things. So I don't see as many issues as I used to, but but there's like new ones that are not related to the game at all lately. It's been bad. Yeah.
Ways, and we're swinging for the fences on
But
a lot of
overall, the
stuff.
game is in
So
like
some of the stuff like just
the state
hasn't
that
been
it's
done
in.
before, or that we don't have necessarily a clear path ahead of us. So we start out on a path. We generally have an idea of where we're going, a trajectory, right? And things happen along the way that we just didn't expect. And it's just because, you know what, we haven't done this before. We haven't tried it before. So let's see how this goes. As those things come in, yeah, you have to assess every single thing as it comes in.
It's
right?
game development, not game construction.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And a lot of this is R&D, and with that, edge cases they tend to prop up. You know?
You said a line here. I want to clarify it here. You said because we haven't done this before. It's not like we haven't made games before.
Correct,
Everybody here has worked on another project, has shipped other games and
Correct,
whatnot. It is the weird reality. The thing that sometimes gets lost is that if you're building something that's truly new. If you're building something that's truly different, you haven't done that before. So so the way in which you tackle it,
I can't with that.
Ideally, the way in which you progress through.
Yeah, nobody's done a third-person inventory before because it's fucking stupid, right? Nobody's done X, Y thing in Z in-game before because it's fucking stupid, right? So going along the lines and saying, well, we've never done this before. Well, a lot of the things nobody's done before is because it's fucking dumb. And we've made many dumb decisions up to this point, right? So I don't know. It wasn't hard to find out that some of these decisions were really stupid, right?
Through it will be different, and the way in which you estimate, schedule it, and whatever has got to be like, okay, we're based.
No one's saying that the scale of the game, we've never done that before, and that's stupid. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying the ship interiors, exteriors, things like that. Nope, not dumb, right? Like the core of the game and the we never done before is why we're here. I don't think that that's an issue at all, right? The failing with server meshing is much less of an issue for me personally. I can only speak for myself than many things that we have in SC. Right?
Your schedules have to be based on
the little,
prior experience.
the little things.
And this is the way we made this thing. But we're not making that thing. We're actually making this thing like this. So we think we can extrapolate from this, but it's always, it's always a guesstimate. It's always your best effort, using all the factors that you have.
And that's a good way of putting it, because I don't want to shortchange our extremely talented and experienced developers, right? Like they know what they're doing. So, but often what we're doing is trailblazing, right? Where we have these super talented and smart individuals for a reason. We want to try new things, and we want to break the mold, and we want to do a lot of stuff differently.
Trying to anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can make an elevator that kills people. TechBug Star Citizen says, "Are we on an interview panel or something? Can we talk about the game?" Yes, we're on an interview panel, and we're talking about the process of producing the game. What's the third pillar? I've lost it now.
Planning.
Again, you cannot get mad at this. Please read the room at this point, Jared. I don't know what else to say. Please read the room. Why is he answering? I can tell you from somebody who streams themselves is you think you have a good idea, everyone hates it, and you probably feel a little self-conscious about it, or you take it personally. And I feel like that's what's probably happening here. Is you're taking the feedback that you're getting personally, but Jared really needs to sit back and go and hear it and listen to it, because I'm sorry, but this is just not what most Star Citizen backers are really looking for, would be my guess. It is absolutely not what I'm looking for. I think you can have both of these guys here and talk to them for a few minutes about this, talk to them about themselves, and then talk about, what's going on with Star Citizen and things like
Planning.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about planning. We
Hey.
actually we kind of already
No.
went into planning. So the planning pillar. How do you plan for that? A thing that's never been built using a way that's never been built before.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, we have what is colloquially called a backlog. That's like all the things that we want to do for now and forever, effectively. And obviously, we're focusing on the things that are upcoming next, right?
She just scratched
We
my
have
bed.
a regular planning cycle where we go through the next
She's never done
3
that
to
before.
12 months, and then we start a high-level plan. We need to establish what our goals
So
are.
I
for
just
the
had to
next
go,
12 months,
like,
right? And some teams go even further, right? They have
Put her on her scratching
24,
post to let her know you can scratch here,
months,
but
like,
not
schedules. But this is just establishing like goals. At some point, the team and the production team have to come together and break down what we want, these goals, into into more
I just saw
tangible,
that.
sizable, digestible chunks, right? That's where production gets really involved. We break down the work into tasks and we schedule out those tasks. Those then inform what release we can hit with a particular feature. So for Ship Trespass, we planned it out for 320, and there was a plan for the longest time. And then at some point we figured, okay, there's extra work that we have to do that we weren't aware of until like fairly late into the development process as we started testing the feature and seeing where it breaks, right?
I know there's also it's one of the there's a it doesn't always happen this way, but there are times when ISC, where we're showing these features, work in progress, sometimes very early, what can actually impact that. It's like ISC is often our chance to get a feature out there a bit early, and get some, present the ideas, present the direction that we're going to,
And then we tear it apart.
see some feedback and go, oh. Okay, and sometimes that allows us to, course change a little bit here and there. Yeah, it's an example of how we use every tool at our disposal. Obviously there's Spectrum where folks can do their feedback, and of course we look at Reddit and social media and stuff. But it's one of the interesting things that has become more apparent in later years that ISC can have a role. Like when
Okay, well, I guess I need to take that and really let that one sink in, because sometimes I'm sitting there and going, damn, they just showed this feature and like get everybody excited about it, and then they can't do it, right? So that's kind of a really important takeaway from this episode is like what they use. They don't just use ISC for the next upcoming features. It may be a next upcoming feature, but it also may be to, hey, what do these guys think about this?
people are wondering,
I think maybe it should be more clear. Hey, we're showing this to you, and we would like to see some feedback. Like, what do you guys think? Remember the golf swing mechanic that people lost their mind about and everything? Why am I not in
why
Paris?
sometimes
Because why would I go to TwitchCon?
something gets shown this week and not that week and stuff like this. It's sometimes a lot of times it's because it needs to be
my
in a
love
position
for
where it's
Twitch, the
showable,
company,
because
died
that's
a
the
long
visual
time
show.
ago.
And this is the show where you just get to see us. So it has to be ready to show first off. But then sometimes there's a point where it's like we're at a crossroads. Let's get this information out there and see how
Hold on.
people respond and whatnot, and then we can decide which direction to go and stuff like that. So I think that probably fed in a little bit to the Ship Trespass stuff, and helped us identify some additional things that we needed to address.
Definitely.
So planning, risk,
And risk,
and
yeah.
risk. All right. Now let's talk about. So that's the job listing. That's kind of the standard. I would say every producer works with risks, works with planning and stuff like this. But every position in game dev goes beyond what's in the mandate. I don't know anybody here that just does what was on that LinkedIn post when they got hired and whatnot. They were always going to something else. What else does a producer do?
I mean, for some of the responsibilities I was given here at CAG, it's all about also supporting the team holistically, generally, right? If there's issues that the team is dealing with, if it's tools issues, if it's collaboration issues with a
I feel like
different
their
team,
mics are super
just struggling
low
to
in
find the
comparison
right
to
information,
Jared's.
That's kind of where production steps support, right? So that the developers can focus on development. So we try to support the team morale, the team productivity. That's a big part, right? And then we also try to be a good example of how to work as a department, right? There's certain principles and guidelines that we have in production that help us become better at what we're doing, right? So we have regular learning initiatives that we kick off, or other initiatives that allow developers to be more productive. On top of that, we're dealing with a lot of like cross-project initiatives. Like if there's a big push for stability or performance, it's usually producers who manage that process and kind of drive it forward so that everyone is aligned and we get the game in a better
So
state.
you're responsible for the instability in the PU.
Not me. That's
what you're saying?
Benoit Boisséjour.
Oh, we just
Sorry.
said Benoit. Benoit.
PES,
Sorry.
PES.
It just he's stuck here for the next 40 minutes. Message me, and I'll make sure he never leaves. You've used the term support a few times.
How's
Go
the audio
deeper.
now? Better?
What is supporting these people like? You know, is this holding their head when they cry? Is this like what does supporting people mean?
Yeah.
It's like yeah.
Yeah, well, I was gonna. So, I mean, you kind of joke about that, but you know, when you talk about those three pillars, right? I think I also say that the foundation undergirding all of those three pillars is people. Like you can't. Part of what what separates sort of the okay producers from the great producers, I think, is that aspect. It's managing and being able to have the emotional intelligence to understand people.
Bro, his mic is
and
even low.
A lot of what we do is some of that. There is stress that is involved with this with game development. There's a lot of range of emotions, and you know, I have literally had a tissue box in my office because I would have a developer come and talk to me. He was struggling with various things, and some work related, some not, and that was, I think, something that I was very, very happy to do. Like, so have somebody who needs a shoulder to cry on or needs to vent or something like that. Like, we go through the day-to-day life stresses. Like, we have to remember these are people that we're talking about here. And
I'm still friends with my old boss, but I had to go in and I was in tears. Not in my last job, but the job before this. And we're still very cool. But the way he handled that was the nail in the coffin for me to quit and go to a new casino, you know?
That is a motivation of mine, and one of the reasons why I went into production is because I love working with people and talking with people and helping people to be their best self. So
I'm glad you didn't use Todd Pappy's name there. That's one of the. Sometimes I get. Yeah. All right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the hierarchy of producers. So we do these shows every once in a while. As we move closer towards CitizenCon in Q3, people who have followed the project for a while know that our content tends to change a bit in Q3 as things are embargoed and being worked on for CitizenCon. It leaves less for us to do in our weekly content, so we tend to take more human interest stuff in this time. Which, thank you for being here for this, by the way. We know from other shows where we have artists and designers
embargoed
that
for
there's
CitizenCon.
a hierarchy. There, like junior, just the name of your position, then position 2, position 3, senior, lead, principal in some cases. What's the hierarchy for producers in CIG?
Well, here it's again, every place is going to be different, but here it's sort of the same thing. We have assistant producer, which is a sort of entry-level role. We have an associate producer, and associate has 2 levels of 1 and 2, and then we got mid-level producer, just producer, 1 and 2, senior producer, and then lead producer, and then you go up from there into production director, and beyond. So it's that's kind of the general hierarchy within production. So it matches pretty well with what we have at the rest of the company in different departments as well.
So you're a lead producer. What does a lead producer do then?
Yeah, so I kind of, for me, it's a lot of I mean, where do I start? people, I do a lot with people. Like I manage people. Philip and others are on my team, and it's a privilege to be able to help coach and guide and mentor wherever I can in that area.
Okay. So he's like
I considered myself
big
sort
now.
of master of schedule. Where whatever's going on, I try to make sure that I have a handle on where everything is in flight, whether it's in early stages or middle stages or later stages. We have a holistic picture of the entire development of Star Citizen. That's sometimes a challenge because there's a lot in flight at any given time, but I try to maintain a hold on that as best I can. I would say, performance is something I kind of keep an eye on in terms of how well we are performing as a team. If there's areas where we don't have the velocity we need, or if we're not executing where we need, I'll kind of go into that and figure out root cause and try to figure out how to solve that problem.
Follow up on that real quick.
Yeah.
Velocity. It's not a term. I don't think we've ever used the word on any of our programs.
Okay.
Here.
Because you don't have it. You are Nicholas Latifi to every other game development's Max Verstappen.
So talk to me about tracking velocity and stuff, because that's something exclusively to producers.
So generally speaking, every team has a rate at which they work, right? And it's easier to measure and for some teams than others. If you are a content producing team and you're pumping out, the same sort of asset over and over again, it's easy to kind of measure.
Props team has made 5 cups this week.
Yes, right. Like you can measure how quickly does it take for one of those cups to go through the process, and you can kind of
Don't
measure
trash Goat
that
TV.
velocity. And you can say if we want,
Okay.
10 props in this next upcoming patch, we only have enough resources to be able to achieve 6 of them. So if we want to increase the velocity, then we need to find ways to either reduce scope or add more people, and there's various levers you can pull to try to increase your velocity. But that's really what it is trying to measure how quickly are we able to execute on our goals, and the reason you do that is so that you can dive into areas where you feel like the velocity isn't quite what you want it to be, and you can help solve those problems.
And give me an example of a team what would be difficult to chart velocity for.
I'd say an R&D heavy team. Any of our core tech teams or gameplay feature teams, it can be difficult sometimes to.
And that's what I was mentioning before. That makes total sense. But the problem here is that before they hit their goals, all right, we would never see Star Citizen until they hit server meshing. I feel like in a early access alpha, whatever, they would be like, all right, I feel like after server meshing came out, they'd be like, all right, we got it. Let's put out a patch, right? Or let's put out a playable experience for people, right? And they've done it so early that I think they've made their velocity just go slower, because even no matter what we do, all the stuff you add to the game, when you have to do PES, now it has to account for all the stuff you added to the game. When you do server meshing, it's going to have to do that again, right? And it just makes everything go so much worse, so much slower, it feels like.
Get a handle on that, because the work items, if you want to call it that, the cups that they're putting through the pipe are not cups. They're foundational technological marvels that people are building. And so it's hard to measure and quantify and compare apples to apples in that way. So what you can look at is sort of individual sort of developer velocity. So you can look at it down to the.
Now, the question that I would ask is what role does a producer have in sharing the fucking schedule with us? Because why are we critical? Why is it so upsetting to follow Star Citizen? Because the issues that we have are not the time that it's taking. I mean, I think yes, but less of the issues are the time that it's taking, and more of the issues are the fact that you communicated that you had server meshing ready to go. It's on the schedule for the end of the year, and for 4 years in a row. How do you get it that wrong? How do you get it that wrong is the question, right? And then we sit here and we're supposed to not say anything about it. 4 years off, right? Where is it falling apart?
Developer level, like, how's this person doing versus that person? And that's not sort of it's a way to help alleviate blockers and help somebody to improve in their craft and that
Does
kind of thing.
does it get as granular as counting check-ins or counting bug fixes and stuff like that?
It can, but it on our project, we don't get that granular. But I don't know, Phil, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, we don't try to be, we don't want to watch over people constantly, right? We trust our developers that, they're professionals, right? All we care about is that what they think, how long it takes, is what they feel comfortable with. They don't give us estimates to make us comfortable. Like, all we care about is when can we ship something to the players.
Yeah.
And what we look at holistically is like, how much can a team achieve within, let's say, 3 months? And if that is half a feature, then it might take 6 months to deliver a full feature, right? So we're trying to be, we try to give the developers the space that they need to figure out all of these difficult problems, and not look over like individual check-ins or measure how many tasks per week they've closed off. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Arc VR in the chat says, show feet?
Don't show feet.
Nice
Damn,
Jordans,
nice
by the way.
There
Jordans.
you go.
Great. You said something I want to try to push on something a little bit here. You said they don't tell you things to make you happy. Like this. I've been in this industry for a while. I was at Blizzard back when we launched World of Warcraft. I've been here alone for over 8 years. It's like this. I know that not just here, anywhere, there is always this temptation to commit to more than is possible. To say, oh
Okay.
yeah, I can get that done in 8 weeks, and then go back to your seat and go, how the fuck am I going to get that done in 8 weeks? Or to say, oh, it's going to take 6.
Apparently, this was, the 2016 sitcom Farming in 3.4.
15 weeks, and have somebody else tell you, oh no, I believe in you. I bet you can do that in 12. And you're like, how do you argue with that person? They said they believe in me. Yeah, okay, I'll try to do it in 12. And so this is a thing that happens in the entire industry. This happens every single place I've ever gone. This happens to every single person I've ever talked to and anywhere else. This internal expectations of not wanting to disappoint, of wanting to live up to what other people expect of you, of wanting to always improve. Hey, if I did the last one in 8, maybe
I'm
I can
very
do the next one
interested
in
in where
6.
this goes.
It's like, how does, without naming any names or anything, we're not going to throw anybody under the bus or whatever, but this is a very real thing that you guys exclusively deal with. And I want to hear your opinions on this. Give me some real talk. How difficult is this to work with? How difficult is this to manage? What are some of the things you have done in the past that have worked to help alleviate this? Maybe what have you done that didn't work?
Yeah.
Give me some real talk here.
I'm actually quite passionate about this because I review all the game design documents that the lead designer puts in front of me. Like, if they say this is the amount of work, I'll try and question that, right? Because they may feel very optimistic that we can achieve something with X amount of weeks, months available to us. But I, as a producer, have the responsibility to push back on that and look into.
So Phil pushes back on Elliot all the time. And Elliot's still the worst game developer at the company.
And look into that scope that they're trying to achieve and ask difficult
How
questions
does it happen?
like, are you actually able to do this on your own? There's so many things you have to keep in mind, right? Some of our leads, they have more than just development work that they have to do. They have their own people. They have a lot of meetings to attend to, right? Everyone I think that I've met in this company is very optimistic about what they can achieve because it's an exciting project. But humans are incredibly bad at estimating. I think there's entire papers written on it, right?
Yeah.
So what we do as producers is question and push back, and wherever we feel like we're not really 100% confident, we can build in like buffer, right? Extra time into the development of a feature schedule so that we can account for unknown unknowns. There's always something that goes wrong. There's a tool that's breaking, or there's some priority that has to be addressed immediately, right?
Build is broken for 3 days in a row and nobody can
Yeah,
work.
so that is something that we have to deal with. It's a very big company with so many developers, with so many people checking in, right? You've talked about Gamedev before. It's difficult to get it in a stable enough state very quickly. And so sometimes we just have to make a push, and that can affect a feature's development time, right? So we as producers try to...
I mean, I think a big part of the problem is that they're developing the game with us watching, and we aren't equipped to deal with the failures because we paid for the game, and that's what we want. Whereas they're developing it, they're doing it day by day, and it's just, hey, what am I supposed to do here? You know? And it's not, you know, they obviously want to release it, but I just think it's hard for us to sit here and be a part of this. We were never meant to be. This was a mistake from the beginning, but it obviously had, like, there's no denying that this isn't the right way to do it and that this is a mistake, but it was a mistake that had a result of making $600 million for a video game to give it basically an unlimited budget. So it was like this weird mistake that ended up working in one way, but failing completely in another.
Always push back, ask questions, try to understand what's the reality of a feature's development timeline, and then build in that extra safety net of buffer.
Yeah,
We're
and
almost
I'd
at
say
6,
that
yeah.
You can't always look at just an estimate on its own, right? Like sometimes a developer will say, this will take me, 3 weeks to do. Okay, cool. But you're not working 100%, 8 hours a day, whatever it is, for that amount of time. Like you are, there's meetings that crop up. There's people get sick or they take time off. You can't just look at an estimate somebody gives and just say, okay, cool, I'm just going to take that and plop it into my schedule, and that's that. We do track and ask teams to account for time for unknown unknowns, which is the things you don't know that you don't know. Because it always happens, that things come up that we just could not foresee. And so we don't max out our team schedules. If they give us an estimate over 3 weeks, we might actually put it in the schedule for something like 4.5 weeks, because we know that there will things that we crop up, bugs will come in that will need fixing. So that there's an element of that as well, of trying to keep in mind the whole context of things, whereas the developer's scope of what they know about
I think there's only been
is the
one feature, one singular feature that has come into the game where I didn't have to give any feedback. There was no bug. There was nothing. And there wasn't additional time that necessarily needed to be put into it. One. The multi-tool tractor beam. When that came in, it just worked. It was basically perfect. Everything else always had problems and just didn't work right. Literally everything else.
stuff they've been asked to do, producers have to be mindful of everything that's going on in the project, so that we can be like, well, I know that there is a release happening around that time, and
Now
that
it's
likely we
broken.
will have to monitor the bugs that are coming in. This team is often supporting the releases and fixing
It
bugs.
still
so
does,
I'm going to take
Leandro.
your 3-week estimate. I'm going to add a little bit of time there because I know that you will likely have to get pulled off and reprioritize to help support the release or something like that.
Yeah, that was actually leads into my next question. We've talked a lot about you asking people and getting that question was about convincing them to give you honest estimations, reasonable estimations and stuff. There have to be times where you've done this long enough, you've worked with some of these people, whoever these people are, here, there, anywhere, like this, and you know better. And like, okay, that person said 6 weeks, but they're not thinking about this and they're not thinking about this other thing. They're forgetting that they've got this other thing coming up in 4 weeks.
That's interesting too.
We need to build this to 8, not
the developer's not saying I can do it in this amount of time, and accounting for the meetings and stuff that they would have.
not to 6. You know,
Hey, Vertex,
are there
thank you.
a lot of times where you have to do that? Where you have to? Is that part of the producer's responsibility to take that information and then reinterpret it at times?
I mean, ultimately, it comes down to trusting what the developers are giving us, but then always
Never
having a
trust
backup
Elliot,
plan,
Phil.
Right? I don't want to question every estimate that I get from a developer because they know best. As a producer, my role is to get the information that I can gather and add some extra caveats to it. And as my risk mitigation process, for instance, add buffer. So there's been times where I've asked, are you sure this is just going to take one day? Because you have a meeting all week, or like the entire afternoon, so it's more like half a day that you have actually time for this. Like, yeah, okay, let's make it 2, right? But I don't try to criticize or like try and disseminate what they're thinking this would take.
Yeah, I ask because there's, we both work with devs from slightly different directions, but when we're filming ISC or even this show SCL and whatnot, we have often got to get their schedules and be like, okay, when we have to kind of plot out when they're going to have time. That time has to match up with when other people are going to have time, and then when we have resources, because we don't necessarily have all our resources just free and available every single day and stuff like this. And there have been times where we were just talking about it earlier today. Reasons like, we thought we were going to film something on one day and then we found out we weren't. Like, we showed up to shoot one time and the developer was like, oh, I got married yesterday. So I'm not coming in today.
Oh, shit.
So it's like, did that skip your mind? Because yeah, that totally skipped my mind when I agreed to do this and stuff like this. So I have to imagine stuff like that affects you as well, because it affects me almost every single week.
It does, definitely. There's a lot of things that they may not be aware of in the current moment, right? And then, yeah, it's okay. We can always adjust. That's why we have the buffer, right?
Yes. Or as Galactica in the chat just put, I can't bring it up right now. We went to shoot some bit with the VFX team earlier today, and you can't see it, but the entire VFX department has been emptied. They're upgrading their desks this weekend. Oh, wow. So we went to film, and just the entire area was gone. We're like, what? And they're like, oh yeah, we forgot to tell you, our entire area is evaporating for a day. It's like, yeah, so like you're talking about trusting the devs and whatnot, and I just know from experience there's you absolutely have to, you absolutely do, but there has to be another layer of we're going to check over here and we're going to check over here because they're always very focused on their work.
I think it's just asking the right questions, right? It's a collaborative process. Game development is a collaborative process. Schedules are no different. You have to have.
I think Jake's right. Is you got to ask the right questions to get the answers you need.
The developers' input, absolutely, because they have.
But I think the wedding guy did that shit on purpose. Anybody else? Oh yeah. I'll be there. I'll do your show for you.
To be the ones to.
Wedding guy scammed him.
Tell you how long
100%.
the thing's going to take. But then you also have to have the producer's context, and you have to have the lead who has probably more years of experience and can say, well, you didn't think about this. Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that, right? It's a collaborative process.
That's because I think not everybody is in the right mind space at the exact moment that you ask them.
Yeah.
There are plenty of times I can't even remember David's name. Hi, David. It's not because I don't know it. It's just that sometimes I'm not in a place.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how producers integrate into the teams. So one of the stories that we tell a lot is like, this is the mission feature team, and this is EU-PU. We're in the process of putting together a new North American PU team, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Nice.
These teams have artists, they have designers, they have programmers, they have QA people, and they have producers. So does that producer belong to that
Montreal.
team? Do they
gameplay?
Do they run that team? Do they assist that team? Do they still exist in a producer hierarchy over here, and they're just kind of moonlighting over here? How's this structure work?
I mean, on the feature side, which I'm overlooking, I see producers as part of those teams' leadership, right? You have your Elliots and your Eds and your Lukes, but then there's also an Ash who's part of that team, who's the producer for the mission feature team. He's just as much part of the mission feature team's leadership.
I think Ash comes around here
Elliot
too.
is, for instance, he's not getting camera time, but he's playing a huge role in actually allowing the team to deliver what they're looking to achieve. Right? He's making it all happen. On the schedules, coordinating between departments, QA, publishing, getting directors on board, getting them to sign off on what we're trying to achieve. It's driving that team from a production perspective and supporting them, right? Like Jake said, a shoulder to cry on. That's what producers often have to provide, because there's frustrations that the team has to contend with, and the producer's always like the calming and reassuring voice that this is a problem. It's good to be annoyed by it, but let's sit down, figure out a process to fix it, right? It's the voice of reason, the voice of a better future, so to speak.
I'm glad you mentioned that. There's been a thing. There's a thing that I sometimes I've been saying. I found myself, without intending to, saying more recently. Every single thing that our backers, our citizens, our players, whatever you want to call them, every single thing they're saying about our stuff. When we release a patch, when we release a feature, when something goes to PTU, when it doesn't go to Evocati on time, every single thing that we see people saying on Twitch, on YouTube, on Spectrum or whatever, has been said internally. Mm-hmm. Like, it has been said internally just a few days before that, just a few weeks before that. Like there is, when it comes to our views
not true
on the game, when it comes to how much the game means.
If that was the case, why would you do fucking a Xeno threat for the 6,000th time? Right? Maybe it is said internally by somebody, but whoever's making the decision clearly doesn't give a shit. Right? So I don't know about that, but yeah. To some extent, I get what he's saying.
How invested our people are in the game. There's very little difference. Our people here are just as invested as the folks, who have, been following this project.
And I believe that too. I believe that every single developer that is working on this game is just as, if not more, invested. And just in little conversations that I can never share with you that I've had with some of the developers, they are more invested than we are in this game. Working more than they should, logging in when they should, like on the weekend to fix something because they saw it in a Twitch stream, something like that. These guys care more than you can possibly imagine. And there's something working against them sometimes, and it really fucking sucks. And I feel really bad for them because they just end up looking stupid way too many times because of dumb decisions by non-developers, right? And it's just, it sucks, man. It fucking pisses me off. And that's more where my frustrations come from, is not from the devs and what's being worked on or how long it's taking. It's everything else around it. It's all the bullshit that's around it and not the actual work,
For 8 years. Somebody in the chat was talking about it. He goes, he always says this every single week. I'm like, well, you watch every single episode. I'm going to repeat myself sometimes, but some people don't watch every single episode, and I'm not very good at this, so sorry. But
bro, I don't know. I repeat myself all the time. I tell the same stories all the time because we only have so much life experience, right, to relate to a situation.
So those feelings, those, oh, this isn't quite how we wanted it, or, oh, that isn't quite working the way it isn't. Why can't we fix that thing? Why can't an elevator kill the person again? Kind of thing. It's like how you said part of your job is dealing with that frustration, internally, like our own little internal triage team in a way.
Like, I think, who was it? I think it was like Nick Elms and his son, Robbie. When they were on, that one really hit home, where they knew who I was and knew what I said about them. And it was like, oh, the words that I say actually have an effect on people, not the game. The game is this entity, but on people. And I was like, man. And ever since then, I tried to be a lot better about who or what, or thinking a little bit more before I speak. Just a little bit, not changing completely, but just a little bit more before I speak, because it might be really nasty towards somebody, you know?
Would you say that was
In
right?
this case, it was a good
Yeah,
thing.
we actually have like a weekly, bi-weekly meeting that is just venting, right? It pretty much is that, right? It's not supposed to be just a place to vent. It's a place where you can share your frustrations, and we play the game every week, right? We have playtests internally that every team does, and after it's like, okay, there's a lot that we need to fix here, right? It's an opportunity for us to get a reality check, and we try to play as much on live
That's
as
good to
well.
hear.
I try to do it all the time to get the thing on the pulse in the current situation in the game, and then have that feed into the decision-making process that we do with directors and leads, right? Everyone is acutely aware of the issues that players have right now. We share those frustrations 100%. I'm seeing the posts, I'm seeing videos of people talking about what they like and don't like, and it matches almost 99% with what I'm hearing internally in meetings with regular developers. So I feel like we are very aware, but there's a challenge in just addressing what is currently the biggest problem at face value. It's almost a little bit more complicated than it appears to be, especially when it's like deep rooted in some of our tech stack. It just requires a bit more brain.
Yeah, well, like everyone like going, invisible players, huge problem, fix it. But they can't fucking figure it out, right?
Power than just one developer going off and doing a bunch of bug fixes.
Yeah.
We track the. We do have a process for tracking all the basically player feedback essentially, and so we do have an acute awareness, as Philip said, of what the issues are. It always just comes down to priorities, right? And I mentioned earlier how we have an expectation during our
Apparently
planning that we
Xenothreat's
allot
a priority.
for unknown unknowns. We also have an expectation that teams account for time to address what we call quality of life issues.
And that's they need more time for quality of life issues. I think another thing that I would have loved, like if we can apply, like this is where, like if we could have used this episode to apply problems that players are dealing with in Star Citizen and allowing us to understand a little bit more. Like, Jared, please, I hope you get to hear this, right? Like, what a fucking opportunity for this right here. What is tech debt? And why is it okay to just continue to add? And why is something prioritized over quality of life? Right? And a producer is very equipped to answer that question. Right? And provide a little context to us about our game that we care about, and not the position and like
and bug fixing.
Yeah.
And so along with the feature development commitments, because we would need to develop this specific feature, we ask for teams to account for unknown unknowns, we ask for teams to account for tech debt, we ask for teams to account for quality of life and bug fixing. And so it's just a matter of what percentage of the team's times are spent on each of those allocations.
If Xenothreat was a quick stress test, we would have been communicated that it was an actual stress test before it was, so then we would go and do it, not after the fact. Just read the world around you, dude.
And often new feature development dominates the team's schedule, but there are times where we pull those levers around and we say, okay, we're going to need to spend more time on quality of life this quarter, or more time on bug fixing, or more time on tech debt. But that's just the challenges of having both a live product and an alpha development game at the same time, right? So those are always just different levers that we have to pull. Yeah.
Tech Travis in the chat says, why not scale back some features until the game gets into a more playable state? That is always the question. That, I feel like we ask ourselves that question internally every single week. It's that's the constant challenge. The expectation of, there's the patch expected. All right, the folks expect the patch, and then folks expect, a certain threshold of content to be in that patch. None of that determines how fast a project gets developed, how fast a feature gets successfully built, how fast bugs are found and destroyed and whatnot. So there's and that's what we talked about earlier. Like sometimes when it's a thing that it's egregious and we can do it, like we pull ship trespass back, we pull it out. Like no, it's like that. And sometimes you go forward and it's like it's like we think this is in a place where it can still generate good feedback. We think it's in a place where it can still be useful for testing, where it can still be useful for, for analytics and stuff. So
what would be a good example for that more recently? Maybe salvage missions, right? Not great, but in a great state to gather some feedback and has endless potential, right?
We still put it out there because it serves a purpose to our game development to get it out there and to get it in the hands and stuff. And there's always that, like I hear this conversation constantly. There's always this back and forth between whether that should be pulled, whether that should go in.
This is a constant thing I see in the Star Citizen community, and I just don't think a lot of people get it. What we expect more than anything else is stability and consistency. That's it. Fix the 30Ks, fix the common bugs, make sure the missions work. Holy fuck sticks, this isn't rocket science. The second you focus only on that, and stability, which is impossible to get when you're adding features to the game, all you're going to find out is that, so let's say they add 0 features to the game and fix all of the stability issues. What do you get? You get an empty game with nothing to do. You have to keep adding features to the game. Stability is going to be what it is. Like, for me, that's what made the mining update so good. It's not perfect. It doesn't even work, to be honest. It has a massive issue that they're hopefully going to resolve. But the on paper, the thought process, what it could be, was very easy to see. And the fact that they're building for the future was very good. So that was my favorite, by far, feature that they added. Because it was like, wow, they did this one right. Even though it has bugs, even though it's not stable.
Just with a little more, pillowing around, to make it safer. It's like this. It's the forever challenge, right?
We've done something similar for 319 when we introduced the ability for tractor beams to remove and reattach items. We knew that there would be issues with some of the ships because they're not up to standard.
I'll die on this hill.
But we accepted that as like
if Star Citizen worked perfectly right now, you would be done playing it within weeks. You would be bored within weeks.
It was a risk because we felt the feature was in a good enough state that it would add so much more value to the current game. We now have the ability to, when you go out for a salvage contract, find loot and strip the ships from their components and make some cash on the side, right? Or re-equip missiles for some of your vehicles. There was value in just pushing forward and not scaling back and not saying, okay, let's get all these ships sorted out and hold the feature from getting released. We felt like it was the right call at that time.
It's that same debate. It's the debate that's going on in Twitch chat right now. It's the debate that'll be on SaltEMike's stream later today. Hi, SaltEMike.
It's literally happening right now.
It's whether a thing should go out, whether a thing should be held back. Oh, that's too many things being held back. Then now the patch has to be delayed. So we get more stuff in.
That's funny. It's literally what we were debating. Oh my God. So I knew that he said something, but I didn't know.
If we delay the patch too much, I thought we were going to pull things out, so we didn't have to delay the patch. It's just this constant, never-ending,
kind of funny,
shifting of levers.
Part of that too, going back to what a producer's role is in all this, because every single one of those things, right? Putting out new features, addressing stability and performance issues, bug fixing and releasing patches, the events we do every year, preparing for CitizenCon. These are all goals that are set by our business leaders, right? They set the goals. This is what we want to do.
Business leaders.
What they don't know is if they come in and they say, hey, this is a new initiative we want to do for this next release. How does that impact everything else we were already planning on doing, right? So as a producer, new request comes down. How does that impact the current state of things? And something that I feel like we've improved at over the years, but still could very much improve on. Just full disclosure here is better communicating impacts on, you know, this new thing came in. Here's what that impact might be. You know, we want this new feature. Okay, well, do you realize by requesting that new feature, it means this team's allocation towards quality of life and bug fixing actually shrinks? Like, was that something that we were aware of? And often that's not the case. So we have to be better at communicating that as well. And I would say over the years we've improved at that leaps and bounds and where we were, you know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, right? But you know, but we can always do better at that. So I'd say that is something we're constantly assessing. Is of all these things we're trying to juggle, which thing is the most important at any given time? Because that does change depending quarter to quarter. And what you know, essentially what do we lose by focusing on this versus that? And that sort of analysis and what I call scenario building of like, if we do this, then that means this. If we do that, that means that. That's the communication management aspect of this, right? Where you come in and here's the impact. Do we want to go left? Do you want to go right? And then we can hopefully help make our business leaders make more intelligent decisions that way.
Oh my gosh, I called SaltEMike out in chat and now they're arguing in chat about whether SaltEMike's a good person or a bad person. SaltEMike's... You should just never call anybody out anymore because you can...
You could call people out, but maybe not me because I'm a little polarizing. I don't know. This is the first thing that I thought of when I heard that they called me out again is like, what Reddit thread is going to get posted about me? What are people going to say about me when they don't know me as a person? And then I just gave up and didn't care because they're all just fucking parasocial weirdos that are obsessed with a video game and maybe can't handle anybody saying anything bad about the thing they spent $10,000 on. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me. I'm just here on the internet sharing my opinions with other people. And guess what? That's a lot of fucking fun because when other people share their opinions, you learn more. When people agree with you, you know, the way they agree with you or the way they disagree with you it's a super great learning experience and it's very cool. And I think I've grown as a person over the years while still allowing myself to be a kid and have fun and all those things. So honestly, part of me wishes they would never say anything, because it creates these weird dynamics around things. Because yes, I think I've been called out more than anybody. Maybe it's because they're in the UK. I know that a lot of the people in the UK are on lunch when I am, you know, right when I'm like getting into the thick of things in my stream. So sometimes they'll see those things. So I don't think I was very much of a focus when Jared was in LA for the opposite reason. Whereas the later at night, you know, your Captain Richard or whatever streamers that you would see more NA times. And it just because of my polarizing nature in the community, it can be sort of problematic that I get brought up in these things. But in the end, for me, developers hang out here. They seem to respect my opinions. We definitely have our disagreements, and but we always come back and are cool, and we always kind of talk through things and share information and all that stuff. And whenever they ask me, I stop everything I'm doing and help them resolve a bug they might have. I don't know what else to say on these things. Am I a good person or am I a bad person? Why don't you fucking look in the mirror before you make decisions about other people? You're probably a fucking bad person too. All right? We're all bad.
You bring it on yourself.
Weird.
You know that, right? Yeah, you just bring it on yourself.
We like SaltEMike. He keeps us honest. You know, that's going to be in his show reel, isn't it?
I try.
So all of this sounds like, you know, we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation today, you know, not in an effort to excuse anything, to make excuses for anything.
You know, somebody DM'd me on Twitter. I haven't responded to it. Somebody DM'd me on Twitter and said, when are all the Star Citizen streamers going to get together and boycott this game so CIG does anything about it? I think people also completely overestimate the impact that we as streamers or we as YouTubers have. This community and the amount of people that are, yeah, I mean, it's Twitter. He probably had a fucking blue check mark too. But the amount of people that have like that pay attention to Star Citizen through streamers or YouTubers is significantly smaller than the amount of people that pay attention to Star Citizen. We have no impact on these things. What is the largest referral count for a content creator, right? Like 5,000-10,000. There's millions of backers. We have like no fucking impact at all. So we can impact like little things, like I said, like, hey, is this bug, can you check and see if this bug fix I put in actually worked? Sure, no problem. That's the impact we can have, right? That's it. So I think people, the people complaining in the Twitch chat during the show, I guess, think that I have some impact on anything, just because I have a bad take or a more negative outlook on the way things are going in Star Citizen. That has nothing to do with it. Like, we have no impact at all. It's so insane. It's just like, yeah, it's super weird. I don't know what to say.
It's part of the mandate of SCL is to have the discussions that you're not going to see at another game developer. You're not going to see an hour-long candid conversation about the intricacies and the challenges of production.
Because nobody cares, and everybody knows that. 14,000 people cared to click on the video. I'm curious how many watched through the intro, right? And then they didn't get to the good parts that were actually in the show. But the thing is not that many people care about these things, and that's why nobody does it. And I think he always like puts this like hat on, like I'm doing something good, and like you are for the people you work for, I think, and maybe for the industry a little bit. But when you set down and set out what the goal of creating this type of content for the game should be, how the fuck did this ever come into it? Is crazy to me. Like, I really believe this. I really believe that these episodes are informational, are good. I imagine they've inspired Star Citizen fans to become game developers and have done great things. But I do feel that, just like, a trend I see on YouTube, and I've been doing a lot myself, is creating another channel for those. Well, in this case, you don't necessarily have to create another channel for them, but separate them out, which I think he's starting to do by typing Gamedev in the title, letting everybody know what to expect, right? I didn't watch the video because I wasn't interested. Didn't care. But the only reason I watched is because I know they said something about me, and I didn't know exactly what it was, and people wanted to see how I would react to it, I guess. So I was like, well, I guess I kind of have to watch this. But I would have skipped this one easily, right? So for me personally, I would love to see these separated out for the people who want to see them, and then SCL and ISC are focused on the game. But again, they don't have enough of a game to focus on, which is the argument that we were having before. Fixing 30Ks there's not enough to focus on. Doesn't make a difference.
From BioWare, Bethesda, as much as I love both of those developers and stuff, that's just not the kind of content they do. That's what the purpose of this show has become. I want to start exploring these aspects of game development, of the process of making games, as it applies to our game, but also all these other games and stuff.
See, like, I want to, Jared wants to, but you gotta realize that you're making these videos not for you. You're making them for us, right? And if you, like, for me, they're, like, take it, Jared, please, you've actually helped us understand a little bit more about how game development, like, why did they make a buggy track? They did a great job explaining why they made a buggy track. You know what I mean? And if this is something you want to do it in your free time. Right? Don't do it on the game's time. It's not about your free time, but when you don't have game stuff, separate it out. And I guess that's what he's doing. It's just, I would just make it a different video. I would just make it a different series, because you have Star Citizen in the title, man. Star Citizen Live. It's about Star Citizen. Right? That's what you come to expect when you watch videos like these. And I know that they set out an initiative to say, you know, there's going to be videos that we make that are for new backers, and there's going to be videos that we make for old backers. But they never said that there was going to be videos that they made for nobody, except for, you know, potential game developers. Right? And that's why I feel like it should be kind of cut off and put somewhere else. Okay, I guess I have to address this in the chat. Jared has no idea of the normal processes of making games. CIG doesn't develop like anyone else. He's worked at other companies. He worked at Blizzard. He said at the beginning of the show. And I imagine that they do spend time seeing other people's processes. And guess what? As other people come in from other companies, they obviously speak about their experiences at those as well. I think you're not right. And rude does not equal the truth. And saying that he had zero game industry experience prior is not true, right? So, you know, don't come in here and thinking you're being based when you actually have no clue what you're talking about. So, listen, I am very critical of Jared, but I will defend Jared to the end that Jared, we would not have the quality of video that we have on ISC. We would not have the quality of SCL that we, you know, when you get a really good episode, we would not have anything if it wasn't for Jared as far as the way they communicate. And I guess maybe I should have started with that before going in on him. But I think Jared is like monumental and super, like nobody puts in the amount of time and effort that Jared has put in, you know, countless hours. I've worked directly with Jared on a few projects, and being there and watching him work, you know, 2016 Gamescom, the long day, 15-hour day to the end of the show. When the show ended, where was Jared? Editing the video to get the what are all the little bars when it's like, it was like a different type of format in the EU than NA. There was all these like little lines in the video. He spent the entire night fixing that for the YouTube upload. Right? And it was like a problem with things like that. Interpolation, something like that. Yeah. He spent like the whole night fixing it. Right? So like, I mean, it's just so insane to like point out as like you care, but you also have to be able to accept feedback too. And I just think that the feedback from me is these episodes should just be separated out. You can still do them, but they're not Star Citizen Live. They have nothing to do with Star Citizen. They're not Star Citizen videos. Star Citizen videos should be talked about Star Citizen. If you want to make these game dev videos, have them part of your YouTube channel. It's cool. People like it, but separate them out. That's just my basic feedback. DJ said when I was filming for ISC, I would zone out of what I wanted to say, admiring how fucking good Jared is at things. Yeah, like come on, man.
I want to thank you for being
as candid
without
being an asshole.
Stuff, especially when I've poked into some areas
Sometimes
that I know
can be
soft, or it can be sore rather. Let's talk about some big wins. Mm-hmm. So, Jake, you've been with this project for almost as long as I have, or as long as I have, I think.
Maybe longer.
In January.
Okay, you've been here just longer than I have then. And you've worked other places before. Mm-hmm. Philip, you've worked other places before. When I say, what's a big win for production? I mean, obviously, shipping a thing on the day we said it was going to go out. Yeah. But where does that happen?
Mm.
Not here.
What's a big win for production?
I mean, earlier this week we were actually talking about some of this because, you know, I think when we
have they had one yet?
Production does too is identify areas of improvement. Okay, this is how current process is going. Is it working or is it not? If it's working, how can we make it better? If it's not working, let's throw it out and do something.
And there's no doubt things have improved over time. And if production is the one that does that, they've had some definite wins over the years.
Something new, right? Like these are the sorts of questions that we ask ourselves. When you introduce something new, a new process, often it takes like a quarter or two before you really start to see the effects or fruits of that process change. But I think what a big win is on the production side, and the reason I bring it up is because it's fresh, because we were talking about this week, is when you see benefits of that process taking effect. You brought up the example of ship trespass earlier. I think the reason, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but the reason why I think that we were able to make that call that say, hey, this isn't quite ready, let's push it out, is because we introduced a new process towards the start of the year, at the end of Q1, where we were measuring progress at the various stage gates in a different way. And so we were able to catch changes to schedule earlier on in the process for some of these features that then allowed us to make calls about, is this going to be ready in time or not?
Cool.
Sometimes things catch us by surprise, and that's never a good feeling, and it's something that
it's inevitable.
As producers, it drives us crazy. Like when things come out of left field and you just weren't prepared for it. Nobody told you, didn't communicate to you. They didn't use your excellent communication management plan that you set up. These are the things that drive us crazy. But so we try to set up processes in such a way where we aren't surprised. We mitigate and alleviate the surprises as they come up. And so I think we rolled out a process change towards the beginning of the year that I think has started to pay dividends. And it wasn't a big thing. It wasn't like a gargantuan, massive.
Like, why are we hearing about this 55 minutes in? That should be here, and we should be talking about it and how it affected the game. And
huge thing, but it showed that, we actually made something better. We did something, we made an incremental change that made the process better.
What was that change?
Over the course of almost 10
why
years now.
Why is it so vague?
That's just to get personal for a second, that's the reason why I stick around as long as I have. One of the reasons is because incrementally each year I see the improvements. I see us getting better.
That's good to hear.
Because
a lot of people don't stick around. Right? We've seen people come and go.
Say at this, there's a lot that's wrapped up into that statement, but at least internally, it feels like we ratchet up year after year in terms of how we run things and how we do things internally.
In my case, I'm here because CR has my mother. I miss you, Mom. I'll find you someday. Okay, so that's a win. Give me a horror story. Give me a production horror story. Without naming names, we're at the end here. We've already gone over a couple lines this week.
Without naming names, except for SaltEMike, that's the only name we name.
You have a good one?
I'll let you take this one.
Okay.
And then you've got one about Arena Commander.
I do.
It was not at CAG. It was at a different company. I think it was probably 30 minutes before live, and we would release our game on Steam, right? So on the Steam backend, there's this little thing that you have to put in if you want to get something to be able to be purchased on the actual store. That's the go live date that you have to set. And 30 minutes before the go live date, we've realized that nobody has actually said anything in that field. So panic sets in, and fortunately, I was working with a company that had good relationships with Valve. And so we kind of picked up the red phone and said, Gabe, make this go live, please, effectively. But in those 30 minutes, I've never been this stressed out. This was a crazy moment, and I'm happy that 5 minutes before live, it was actually live.
So up until the day of release, nobody had noticed that there wasn't a go live date on the Steam page?
I guess.
It's lucky that you had Gabe's phone number,
but it's one of these things that you should have known. It's probably on a checklist somewhere, but nobody triple, quadruple checked.
Yeah, well, because it's a thing that you're not looking for it every single day. You're only looking for it at the end. So it's like it's those one-off things. It's hard. You can't build a ritual, a habit of checking to make sure you have your go live day. Jake, I want to hear yours.
I mean,
Arena Commander one.
I was thinking about this. It's funny. Some of what I would call horror stories in the moment, I now kind of weirdly look back on fondly.
Nostalgic.
I don't know what that says about
the wait for 3.0. This, oh god.
Me, but I remember the early days here.
Hey, Shende, thank you,
trying
man.
to get that first publish of Arena Commander out the door, and the months,
0.8, something like that.
yeah, it was like 1.0. I think it was what it was. If I try.
Now, the first Arena Commander was 0.8. The first Arena Commander multiplayer was 0.9. 1.0 was this whole like big change they made to it.
I can't remember now.
No, the very first one was 0.8.
0.8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but the days leading up to that were intense. I'll just say for what it is. You know,
It was just Vandal Swarm,
late nights,
0.8.
people sleeping under their desks and stuff like that. But what was great about the whole thing was that often at that time the Austin studios air conditioning would go out for no reason. So it was really, really nice to be up super late at the studio with no air conditioning in hot Austin summers, and or I guess at that time it was in spring. But that was it was things like that I look back and go like, man, I don't know, that was trying. Let's just put it that way. But I look back now and I kind of laugh about it because I'm like, man, like that's.
Look at how far we've come.
You have, I don't know what it is. It's just like this camaraderie building that also happens. Some of those people I still here, I still work with, and you know, built relationships with, and you kind of, you know, build those friendships that last a lifetime.
Those moments
like
bond.
That, so.
If it
Yeah.
was spring, it was 1.0, so you were right.
Yeah,
It was 1.0. Yeah, no, I think we all have those horror stories that turn into fond memories, or at least not, or less horror stories. Like somebody mentioned the holiday live stream to me like 3 weeks ago, and I didn't go into a PTSD nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, healing is possible.
Healing is possible. It's good to know.
That was anybody who hasn't seen that, don't.
All right, that's it, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. Jake, Philip, thank you for discussing production. This is a topic that, you know, if you watch, I've done about 1,450 videos for CIG, and I think in all of them, we've done maybe 5 total that have been about production. Once we made a schedule with Eric Kyron Davis.
I remember that.
That was super exciting.
No, it wasn't.
You know, so it's not a production that gets covered a lot. If we only do it 5 times, you know, nobody else is doing it like ever. You know, like, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and to do the show, and for you to let us take advantage of you while you were here to do it in person.
Happy to do it. And could I also just say one quick thing?
Sure.
Is that I while I got the opportunity and the platform to just thank the community. I love talking about this, but one of the things I mentioned earlier, why I stay year after year, and one of the big reasons why I stay after year is this community. It's the players. It's the
Just go on Spectrum.
I
You'll
watch
quit.
the streams. I watch the YouTube
Go on Spectrum. You quit.
videos. I love seeing how much fun people have, and I love the fervor around the project. Even the sometimes negative fervor. It motivates us. It keeps us going. But the positive stuff is also fine. It's also good. But I love this community. I think it's second to absolutely none. And I just wanted to say thank you to the community. So
Even Doc Martin 007, who says it's an uninformative stream.
that's good. I'm glad we could be informative.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Remember that it's
The thing is it was informative. It's just informative on things that are not related to the game necessarily. They could have dove more into the game, and they just choose not to for Jared's choice reasons, it sounds like. But again, I think it would be perfectly fine if you just separated it out. And it was like, this is how game development works at our company videos.
The Foundation Festival, I believe, is going on right now. There's a free fly available. You can check out the robertsspaceindustries.com website for all the details on that. And of course, if you're in the Paris area, there is a Bar Citizen Paris tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow because I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow morning. So that's in Paris. TwitchCon is in Paris. That's in Paris. A couple fires and some outbreaks are in.
Bro, why fly? Oh my God. Okay, I'm not from the UK, obviously. I feel like it's like an easy train to Paris, right? From where he is. Like maybe it's like a few hours or whatever, but you just hang out on your phone or whatever. I would be taking the train everywhere. Why ever fly to Europe? It's a 2-hour plane. Okay, that's
Paris,
pretty
but
far.
It's a big place, and so
10-hour
check your maps,
train?
check for safety areas. So far,
Never mind then.
everything's looking okay. So if you're in the area and you want to show up, you should show up for that. I'll be there, and we'll have a couple of giveaways and stuff to do. So we'll have that.
I thought it would be
and
like
of course,
a few
remember
hour.
that ISC is still on hiatus. It'll come back towards the end of this month with a bunch of looks at continuing look at. CIG's development. It might have a thing with the VFX team. It depends if they get their desks back.
Okay.
So for Star Citizen Live, I'm Jared. That was Jake. That's Phil. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all here next week, everybody. Take care.
All right. I mean, yeah, I think I said what I needed to say. I obviously, it feels very validating to hear your name be called out on shows like these, and it feels very good. But also for me, I know what it creates, and sometimes that makes me not feel very good. But yeah, Phil's awesome. Phil's here all the time too in the chat. So Phil's really great. And he was here when we started the stream and was like, I'm not going to be able to watch it today with you guys. I think he could have provided a lot of context to the questions that we might have been asking. And if you follow the streams, I'm sure he'll be here and be able to answer some of those questions potentially in the future. But the idea of just going back to the being mentioned and then people debating me, that is a very weird and uncomfortable experience, right? You guys don't know me. Like, even the ones that are here every day don't know. You know me more than the average person that's probably debating those things in the Twitch chat. I would love to go back and look at that moment and see what people were actually saying, because it would just be so weird, and see who's actually saying it to know who to maybe just like remove from my Twitch stream, so they don't have to just disappoint themselves with the things that I have to say or something. But yeah, I mean, it's just a very weird experience and something that is only going to get worse as I grow. So I should get used to it, right? I plan on continuing to grow. I can plan on continuing to make Star Citizen content, and I can plan on being in your face more than you would want, some of you. So guess what? I'm going to have to get used to some hate, because haters are going to hate, I guess. But in the end, again, the last bit of feedback, I'd love to see these separated out into something else, and the Star Citizen videos focused on Star Citizen videos. And that's it.